Shalom people. So I just want to let you guys know I now have a Patreon page for any of you guys that want to tip/donate to my video making efforts, because it does take me quite a while to produce some of these videos. And you guys know, for you guys that do your own research on these type of topics, the amount of nonsense that you have to sift through just to get to some form of truth. So any contribution will be greatly appreciated, even if it's only £2. I also want to let you guys know videos are still going to be uploaded on YouTube. I'm just using Patreon as a donation service, and the only videos that are going to be uploaded on Patreon is videos that get completely blocked on YouTube, or if I can't upload them. But with that being said, please subscribe, like the videos. Let's get straight into it. So first and foremost, I would like to give a shout out to the brother Psalms 51 for sending me this article. I appreciate it. So welcome to another edition of BLM versus the MOORS, or Black Lives Matter versus the MOORS. So what is this about? So I've already made a part 1 and part 2. Now what the Black Lives Matter versus the MOORS series is about Black Lives Matter going throughout Europe, tearing down relics, monuments, statues, so on and so forth of their own history under the disguise it's racist. Now I've made a statement. The powers that be, the elite, are using these activist groups like Black Lives Matter to tear down black history unbeknownst to them, the so-called black people. But unfortunately, it's easy to convince black people to do these things because all our people have been taught is slave history. And even the slave history that our people have been taught, a lot of it is just narrative. And this is reinforced through pop culture, through the TV shows, through the college education system, from public school system, the history channels, the documentary series, movies, Hollywood, so on and so forth. And that causes our people to run on emotionality. A lot of our people, you don't even have to know history like that. You just have to think critically. But unfortunately, a lot of our people do not have that because, as I've stated, they run on emotionality through the programming that they have been installed with. But we're going to take a look at this article and see where they're coming from. So the title, it reads, End of the Road for Black Boy Lane. Officials are to spend £186,000 to rename London Street. Excuse me. Now, why do they want to remove it? Because they're telling people it's racist. And all they have to do is concoct a story like King Charles, he sold a lot of black people during his time period. So he named this street Black Boy Lane because he sold a lot of black boys into slavery. And unfortunately, a lot of our people will believe things like that because the majority of our people do not know about our rulership in Europe. But we're going to continue on with this article and we're going to pick it apart and analyze it. Labour-run council decided to change Black Boy Lane after last year's protest. It will give a voluntary £300 payment to 183 homes impacted by the name change. It would also spend £50,000 on a salary to a support officer to help those affected. Politically correct councillors are set to spend £186,000 of taxpayers' cash renaming a 300-year-old road despite no evidence it has racist connotations. Labour-run Haringey Council decided to change the name of Black Boy Lane in West Green, North London last year after the Black Lives Matter protest. What a surprise! Black Lives Matter is not for our people. It's funded behind the scenes allegedly by George Soros, and it's founded or led by 3 black lesbians. Black Lives Matter is a pro-homosexual, pro-lesbian, pro-transgender, and pro-feminist movement disguised as a Black Power movement. And it's actually ingenious calling it Black Lives Matter because when anybody criticizes the organization, they get deemed racist because Black Lives Matter. So if you criticize it, that means you don't care about black lives And if you're a black person who criticizes Black Lives Matter, they're going to call you a sellout and an Uncle Tom and a Sambo, you know, the usual things. And if you pay attention to a lot of these Black Lives Matter rallies, it's always homosexuals, lesbians, and transgenders in the forefront, mainly women. And have you noticed a lot of these crowds, the majority of them, like 80% of them are Caucasian. So what's really going on? So brothers, sisters, I'm going to show you something real quick. So this is Black Lives Matter 13 guiding principles, and I decided to highlight 1, 6, 7, 8, and 13. So we're going to read them. Number 1, restorative justice. Restorative justice. We are committed to collectively, lovingly, and courageously working vigorously for freedom and justice for Black people and, by extension, all people. So first and foremost, what do you mean by extension of all people? This is supposed to be Black Lives Matter. This is supposed to empower our people. Why the heck do we need to empower others? But that goes into globalism and accepting everybody in. And when you let and accept all the other races and demographics, it's not going to empower so-called Black people. But let's continue on. Number 6, queer affirming. We are committed to fostering a queer affirming network. When we gather, we do so with the intention of freeing ourselves from the tight grip of heteronormative thinking, or rather the belief that all in the world are heterosexual unless she, he, or they disclose otherwise. Number 7, trans affirming. We are committed to embracing and making safe space for trans brothers and sisters to participate and lead. I'm going to run that one back. We are committed to embracing and making safe space for trans brothers and sisters to participate and lead. So where does that leave you, so-called Black men? But let's continue on. We are committed to being self-reflective and doing the work required to dismantle cisgender privilege and uplift Black trans folk, especially Black trans women who continue to be disproportionately impacted by trans antagonistic violence. Number 8, collective value. We are guided by the fact all Black Lives Matter, regardless of actual perceived sexual identity, gender identity, gender expression, economic status, uh, disability, religious beliefs or disbeliefs, immigration status or location, and last but not least, number 13, Black women. We are committed to building a Black women affirming space free from sexism, misogyny, and male-centeredness. Now, does this sound like an organization that empowers Black people? Hey, I'm just asking questions because I know those YouTube cops are watching me right now. But I'm just going to leave it as that. You guys can come up to your own conclusions. So back to the article. So Black Lives Matter protests, but residents are firmly against it. It will provide a voluntary £300 payment to the 183 homes impacted by the proposal to call it La Rose Lane, after local poet John La Rose. The authority will also spend £50,000 on a salary for a support and administration office to help the residents affected, alongside other costs such as replacing signage. The project will also cost an estimated £186,000. Hundreds of streets in England and Wales are at risk at being renamed by councils over the fears that they have links to slavery and colonialism, according to a report from think tank Policy Exchange. And I guarantee you, those higher ups in that think tank Policy Exchange know what they're doing. They know deep down the real reason why they're trying to remove this street name. But let's continue on. Haringey Council is unsure about the context of the street's name and historians say it is likely to have come from a former pub nearby called the Black Boy, which was the nickname for King Charles II. Now this is where the critical thinking kicks in. As I said, even if you don't know history like that, the real question you need to be asking yourself, why the heck was King Charles II called the Black Boy? Why would he have a nickname like that? You know what? Let me go do some research and see why he has that type of nickname. But unfortunately, most of our people are not going to do that. And I'm going to show you why King Charles will call the Black Boy. But let's continue on with this article. So Sharon David, 55, a black woman who has lived on Black Boy Lane for more than 40 years, said no one has said anything about the name before. Why all of a sudden now? Because of the Black Lives Matter movement? Changing a street name is not the answer. Some 72% of the residents who responded to a consultation last month are firmly against the name change, and 55% of those in St. Anne's ward, which Black Boy Lane is a part of, do not want the proposal to go ahead. The money could literally be donated to fight actual racism. And Taylor, 48, who has lived on the road for 14 years, said this ridiculous amount of money could be spent more wisely. Edwidge Culverwell, a labourer councillor who grew up in South Africa during apartheid, believes the decision to rename the road is short-sighted. The 70-year-old said, "They say Black Boy Lane has racist connotations, but I grew up in South Africa and this is rubbish." Some 72% of the residents who responded to a consultation last month are firmly against the name change, and 55% of those in St. Anne's ward, which Black Boy Lane is a part of, do not want the proposal to go ahead. So with all of that being said, let's see why King Charles II was called the Black Boy and why it was called the Black Boy Lane, the street. So this is the Black Boy Inn, and as you can see on the logo, it's featuring a black man with a golden hoop earring. Now, where have we seen an image like this before? It's not like I've made multiple videos showing images of the black man with the golden hoop earring. It's not like my avatar has a same type of image like this. And no, this is not a black African slave that they decided to put on their logo. So this is a statue of King Charles II housed at Lichfield Cathedral. And as you can see, his face, his nose area has been disfigured. Now, why is that? Now, it's a rhetorical question. We already know this, especially if you brothers and sisters that have watched my whitewashing of history video. But let's get a zoom in on this statue. So here's a close-up of the statue, brothers. And as you can see, the face has been somewhat disfigured. It must be due to that bad weather they keep talking about. But I've stumbled across this statue by watching a YouTube video from one of the brothers from a camp. Now, do not ask me what camp they are from because I do not remember. And their YouTube channel has been deleted. But what these brothers did, they went to Lichfield Cathedral to uncover the history, and they found this statue. And guess where they found it? They found it at the back of the cathedral, out of sight. Now you have to ask yourself a question. Why is the statue of King Charles II at the back of the the back of the cathedral, out of sight? You would think the king would be at the front of the castle, or I keep saying castle, at the front of the monastery or inside the monastery, right? Now, our brothers asked for the employees. One of the brothers confronted the employees and asked them about the statue and why it's disfigured. And as per usual, they went to the same old excuse. Weather conditions. As I said, that's one of the favorite go-tos, and the brothers called them out on it. But do not ask me for that video because, as I said, their YouTube channel has been deleted, and I don't even remember what their name was. So this is from the book, The Negro Question Part 6 by Lee Cummins. And guess who's that on the front cover? That's your boy King Charles II, the black boy. Yes, he was a so-called black man. So this is the first page from the book, The Negro Question Part 6 by Lee Cummins. So it reads, the image on the front cover, so that's the image that we just saw, of this book is the original Delaware Charter, which includes the original black image of King Charles II of Scotland and England. This book is the first of its kind, in that it proves the original founding fathers of the 13 British colonies were 5 black kings from Europe. 4 of the black kings were black Stuart Highlanders, Scots, and the 5th was a black German king by the name of King George II of England. I provide you with Rare Ship Manifest that gives a physical description of the black Scottish Highlanders as they board the convict ships. You will also read the eyewitness account of former English Secret Service agent John Mackey as he describes the black princes, dukes and barons of the Scottish nation. I have inserted DNA evidence from 4 different sources which validate the colonization of North America by black people. And this is why you hear me make statements how the black Europeans colonized the Americas and the slave trade, all of that was led by the black nobles. Now, you see why they have to teach you all this false history? A lot of you black people that think your ancestors were enslaved by Caucasians by default, it's most likely that your ancestors owned white slaves. But you see, they teach history from a black and white standpoint, no pun intended. For example, the narrative is every single black man, woman, and child from 1619 were enslaved, and all white people during that time period were slave masters. And that's how they teach history. There's no nuance or fine print details that goes into it. But let's continue. So all of a sudden, we are reading articles that say 40,000 years ago, dark-skinned people came into Europe and populated Scotland, Britain, Ireland, Spain, and America. We are reading statements from their scientific terms. The ancient Europeans retained their darkness longer than expected. We are reading statements like, they were here, but they vanished. Can you say damage control? The results from genetic research, the writings of the ancient historians, the Negro Question book series, and the archaeological record are forcing the Europeans to admit that the true founders of Europe and America were black. This will be astonishing to the so-called Negro and his scholars, but it will be old news to the white elite. They already know this. Take your time when you read this book and don't be in a hurry. This is truly the next episode. And as he stated in this book, the white elite, they already know this, and that's why they're using organizations like Black Lives Matter to tear down these artifacts and relics. As I said, they're using them as a proxy. King Charles II, Steward of Scotland, Highlander. Image location, Westminster Wax Museum Abbey, London, England, and Jesus Chapel, Islip, Chantry. This is a wax effigy of King Charles II, grandson of King James I of England. This was taken of him immediately after his death in 1685. This black wax effigy of King Charles stood over his grave 150 years after his death. The wax figure was transferred to Jesus Chapel, Islip, Chantry, where it was photographed by Sir Benjamin Stone in 1896. I blew up the image on the next page so you could get a close-up of the grandson of King James VI of Scotland. So this is from a book, When Scotland Was Jewish, Presbyterian reformer John Knox, scholar George Buchanan, Marquess of Argyll Archibald Campbell, the Earl of Akram Robert Kerr, poet Alan Ramsay, Earl of Southesk James Carnegie, a physician William Gordon. As cursory inspection will affirm, none of these prominent Scotsmen look typically Scottish. In fact, they appear rather dark and Semitic. Yet, here they are, Scottish aristocrats. The Scottish royal stewards were equally dark and Semitic, aka Shemitic, in appearance. Of Charles II's dusky appearance. His mother, Queen Henrietta Maria, had been half mortified, writing after her confinement that the child was so dark she was ashamed of him. Now, me personally, I think that's them just throwing their conjecture in there, because to me that makes no sense, because they were all so-called black. But let's continue on. Was so dark she was ashamed of him. He was quickly dubbed the Black Boy. Enemies made out that he was a black bastard begotten by a black Scotsman. So shout out to Jeru, who provided this source from John Mackey. As we read, he was a spy. So here's the evidence. Memoirs of the Secret Service by John Mackey. During the reigns of King William, Queen Anne, and King George I, London, 1733. So Charles Lennox, Duke of Richmond, son to King Charles II, so this is his son, by the Duchess of Portsmouth. He is a gentleman, good-natured to a fault, very well bred, and have many valuable things in him. Is an enemy to business, very credulous, well-shaped, black complexion, much like King Charles, not 30 years old. So this is a reference on the website Rasta Livewire, which is also an excellent website showcasing the real black history. Now the website is a bit pro-black in a sense where it seems to call everything African, but we're going to read this here. So, Black King of England, according to the annals of the English monarch, Charles' appearance was anything but English, with his sinuous curling mouth, dark complexion, black hair, and dark brown eyes. He much resembles his Italian maternal grandmother, Marie de Medici's side of the family. During his escape after the Battle of Worcester, he was referred to as a tall black man in parliamentary wanted posters. And lambacking after that wanted poster, the black boy, described by Parliament in a wanted poster as a tall black man, 6'2". James Boswell wrote, "The swarthy steward." Charles' appearance, curling mouth, dark complexion, black hair, and dark brown eyes. He doesn't get much more clearer than this man. So many references